Greetings, programs. Get your ass in here. Welcome to another week of poverty podcasting called the Geeks from Apartment 2 podcast. This is being recorded in Apartment 2 studio somewhere deep in the heart of Rock City, New York. I am Alan One, the geek with the voice, the big girl's choice, the one that keeps her panties oh so moist. Let's take care of some business out the way. You can, of course, we're on YouTube. You can like, share, subscribe, finger pop that bell so you be notified of all new episodes. You also get at me at email, luckymerciless1@gmail.com. You can also get a hold of us through Twitter at Geeks from Apartment 2. And I will put that, as always, in the description below. So, as you might have guessed or noticed, there should be somebody else with me today, Brother C, which he's not here today. And the reason for that is, fuck Brother C. Fuck him right in his ass. No, there's no animosity. There's no beef. We did not break up. Brother C had some family obligations that he had to do. So that's why he's not here. He will be back next week. That kind of left me with a conundrum for this episode because I said, well, do I put out an episode this week or do I just say no? And I'm going to get into why I'm flying solo this week in a little bit. But he'll be back next week, and at that point, everything hopefully will be back to normal. But for right now, I'm sitting here, got my cigarette going, got a couple of courage juices going, because I haven't done a solo episode, honestly, in almost 10 years. As some of you, maybe somebody who is new listening, I did an internet radio show 10 years ago by myself. And at least with that, I had the benefit of having music to play. So I would just play some music and I would come back and talk some bullshit and be like, all right, let's get into this new shit. I can only imagine right now somebody that's walking past my apartment and hearing me talk to no one and probably saying to themselves, oh, fucking shit. Are we living next to a fucking psychopath? As you guys know, we a couple weeks ago, this happened again. Almost happened because Brother C was sick, and I said, "Well, maybe I won't do an episode. Maybe I will." And as you guys had heard, that maybe I should do an ASMR episode. That's not going to happen today. I do not have a whispering voice, nor am I a hot chick with a sexy voice. I have a face for podcasting, as they say. But the reason why I'm doing this show by myself today, I can tell you, I take that back. I will promise you two things. One, this will not be a very long episode of the Geeks from Apartment 2 podcast this week. And number two, I will give you an explanation as to what happened 9 days ago. So let's not waste any more time. Let's talk about DrunkenMania. 9 days ago, Sunday, April 7th, 4 guys came into Apartment 2 Studios to watch WrestleMania, share some drinks and some laughs. And for the most part, I had a blast that day, or I should say that night. WrestleMania was way too fucking long. It was fucking a whole work day. If you put the pre-show and the fucking the main show together, it was almost 8 fucking hours. That's a long time. And we tried to record a podcast. So I was feeling good until the other 3 left. And I was going to sit here and watch the main event. And what happened was, as soon as my head hit that pillow and my eyes closed, I was dunions. You understand me? Fucking dunions. When I came to, it was 6:30 the next morning. I was like, holy shit. So the first thing I did was actually watch the main event. And we'll probably get into WrestleMania, maybe. maybe a little bit later on. But after I saw the main event, I went back and listened to the audio of that particular show, of that particular episode. And what I got, or what I heard anyways, was absolute garbage. It was almost unlistenable. It was there was the first problem, and then I will say this: a lot of the problem is on me, and a lot of the blame I will put on my shoulders, because when we were recording that episode, I didn't realize that the TV was loud enough for it to record as well. So that's one distraction. The other distraction was, which you guys didn't even hear, because you guys only got, it was a 90-minute show, but you only got the last hour of it. You didn't get the first 30 minutes. The first 30 minutes of that show was absolutely crazy, in the sense that not only was a TV playing in the background, but as me and Brother C were trying to have a conversation, there was another conversation going on as well. So everybody was talking over each other. And it was up to me to try to corral the other two. And when I tried to do that, one of them, I'm not going to say who, but he knows who he is, said, well, this is DrunkenMania. There's no fucking rules. And he was right and he was wrong about that. He was right in the sense that, yeah, for the last 3 years, there were no rules. It was just the four of us would get together and watch WrestleMania and have drinks and say the craziest shit that we could say. So he was right about that. What he's wrong about is there were no rules for 3 years because there were no mics, like this one right here. And when you put microphones into the equation, that changes things, because it needs to be focused. It needs to be controlled, for lack of a better term, because I don't want to come off sound like a goddamn tyrant. But there needs to be control. There needs to be focus. Or else what you're going to get is 4 people trying to talk over each other, and at the same time have a TV that's trying to talk over us as well. You understand what I'm saying? So after I heard that audio, I talked to C that Tuesday after Mania, and he said, and we both agreed at one point that we're not going to put out this episode. And for a while there, that's what I decided. We're not going to do this. We're not going to put out this episode. The next day, which is that Wednesday, I talked to DK. And DK was like, well, at least they got the origin story. And that might be, to him, that was the best part of it. And so I sat here and had really thought about it for a good day or two, whether or not I was going to put this out. Because if we didn't put this out, then we would have teased and teased and teased about this particular episode and not give you guys anything. I wasn't really comfortable with that. Just like today, because had not given you DrunkenMania, or at least I felt the best part of it, and not done the apology episode, which is what this is this week, you just had to wait 2 weeks for an explanation, and I did not want to do that to you listeners, to you programs out there who have took the time and the effort to sit down and kick it with us. And that's why I'm doing this show solo tonight and talking to absolutely no one, to an empty room. Well, not an empty room, there's shit in here, but to no one else, because I felt bad about that episode. As a matter of fact, that episode is one of our least viewed episodes so far. Even Al Capone got more views than that particular episode, right? So suffice to say, people denied the episode and they deserved an explanation, which is what you're getting right now. I apologize for a couple of things. One for the audio, and the other is that when I decided to put out this episode, I had graphics. I had an idea for this episode again, and the first time I tried to put it on YouTube, it did not work. And it was kind of crunch time. It was Thursday night, and I knew that if I didn't do this at that particular point, you would have not gotten that episode at all. So I re-rendered it without graphics and just threw it out there. So I apologize for not having graphics. This show is slapped together anyways. You're not getting high quality, but at the same time, I don't want to put out horse shit either. That's not fair to you guys. So I hope that this was an explanation that you guys wanted and needed. And it's another week. It's time to move on, and so let's move on, right? So, as C would probably say if he was here, what bullshit did I have time for this week? Honestly, y'all, if you don't hear it in my voice, it's been a very rough week for me personally. I've had some complications this week that I can't get into, some personal stuff, and with the podcast. So if I sound a little fucking loopy this week or more than usual, that's why. But I did have time for some bullshit this week. So I'm going to start with some movies, because that's I took a few days and watched some movies, try to get my mind off of shit that was going on. So I was like, what's the easiest thing to do? Click your fucking brain off and just watch some movies. So I saw 3 in the last 9 days. Let's start with the first one, which was Us. Finally got around to seeing Jordan Peele's second horror movie. The story, if you don't know, is it's a husband and wife. The wife is played by Lupita Nyong'o. They have 2 kids. They go out to this summer residence that's connected to her. And while they're out at this summer house, they're accosted by another family that looks just like them. And to say anything else would be spoiling it for you guys out there, and I don't want to do that. I will say this. I like this a little bit more than Get Out. Because as she alluded to a couple weeks ago, I like the first 2/3 of Get Out, but I hated the end, where with Us, the opposite happened. The first 2/3 of Us, for me, was just okay. In the sense that I've seen this before. I've seen this with a lot of other people being trapped in a house type of movie. All it is the first 2/3 of it anyways, is the strangers with black people. You can just call it niggas. Niggas in a house, because that's what this is. It has the same tropes that you would get from movies like The Strangers, or something like Inside, which is way more brutal than Us will ever be. Let me say that. If you've seen Us, you know what I'm talking about. If you've never seen it, you probably won't, because it's not a movie they're gonna just play on fucking Netflix or Hulu. It's a very rough movie. One of the roughest movies I've ever seen. But Us is not that bad as far as brutality and everything. But the end of this movie, the last 20 minutes of this movie, fascinated me. Without spoiling it for you people out there, for everyone out there, this was quite a fucking ending, and I was very intrigued as to why this movie ended the way it did. You understand what I'm saying? Hold on for a second. Let me. I can hear shit dripping in the background. I can only imagine that it's being picked up by this mic. So I will be right back. God damn it! That faucet was leaking. So we're back. Oh, I'm back anyways. I am back. Sitting here talking about Us. I did like it. It's is it a theater movie or a bootleg movie? Definitely a theater movie. I think if you can get past the first 2/3, which is just standard horror shit, the ending is worth it, in my opinion. Here's the other thing about Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele, to me, is like the bizarro me. He's me if I took writing a bit more seriously than I did back in the day. Because clearly Get Out is a story that I would have wrote about my time, twisting out white girls. But Us is definitely Brother C's story. The whole time that I'm watching this, I'm thinking of his family and saying to myself, this has to be like one of his greatest nightmares is that he he saves enough money to take his family out on a vacation, and on vacation they get accosted by a family that looks just like them, which is just bad enough because there should not be two Brother C's in this universe. There should only be one, and even Brother C would tell you that right now. But once again, I like this movie. I like Lupita Nyong'o in it because this is her story mostly, and I've liked everything that she's done so far. I thought she was great in Black Panther. I thought she was great in Us, and I definitely thought she was great in 12 Years a Slave. She breaks your fucking heart in that fucking movie, and that's one of the most depressing movies I've ever seen, and I can't watch it. It's up there with Requiem for a Dream. It's one of the more depressing movies I've ever seen. Every time I try to sit here and watch this movie, I just get sad, super sad over it. You know what I mean? But I liked her in Us. As far as Jordan Peele's career in horror, jury's still out. He's made half a good movie and one good one, and he's part of Twilight Zone. But my point with all that, with the new Twilight Zone, is that CBS owns Twilight Zone anyways. So they could have rebooted this anytime they wanted. It just so happened that Jordan Peele is the new face of horror, I guess. And that's why they rebooted it. They could have done it with anyone. Hell, they could have done it with Eli Roth. They could have done that with Kevin Smith. They could have done it with a lot of people. It just so happens that Jordan Peele is the it guy of the day. He's a soup du jour. And because of that, let's reboot Twilight Zone with him. But I did like Us quite a bit. The second movie that I saw was another horror movie, and that was Happy Death Day to You. It's a sequel to Happy Death Day. Came out, I think, a year or two ago. And, man, how do I explain this movie? So, the actress that plays Tree, that's her name in this movie, she's back in this one. And if you saw the first one, it was basically Groundhog Day with Scream. Killer is coming after her. She gets killed. She comes back day after and relive the same day until she figures out who the killer is. Well, in part two, she finds out that why she went through all that in the first one is because of some quantum physics experiment that one of the students is doing in this movie. And so it's not even really her story in the beginning. It's really somebody else's story. She just so happens to be caught up in the middle of it. And because of that, of a mishap with this science experiment, she gets sent back to the same day in the first one, where she has to relive the day over and over and over again. Except this time, things are different. The best I can describe this movie to you is basically Back to the Future 2. If you've seen Back to the Future 2, that's what Happy Death Day to You is. It's the horror equivalent of Back to the Future 2, which is very clever. Very, very clever. And they do talk about, or at least make reference to Back to the Future in Happy Death Day to You. That's about That's about as close as I can get to describing this movie without spoiling it for you. Is it a theater movie or a bootleg movie? I think if you like the first one, then you'll probably like the second one as well, because I did. Will it make the list? I'm not sure. Come back in December, late December or early January, and we'll talk about that. But for right now, I did like Happy Death Day to You, so I'm sure it's out on Blu-ray. If it's not, now the last movie I'm going to talk about is Shazam. Saw Shazam the other day, the latest from DC, or the DCCU, the DC Cinematic Universe, starring Zachary Levi, who I always get confused for some reason with John Krasinski. And I always have to keep the two separate. Like Zachary Levi was on Chuck, whereas John Krasinski, anyways, was in A Quiet Place and The Office. I don't know why I get those two mixed up a lot, but I do. So, uh, Asher, what's his name? Asher Angel? That's right. Plays Billy Batson, which, by the way, if that is his real name, that's a kick-ass name. Because if Hollywood didn't work out, and this kid got older and got into porn, that's a great porn name. Asher Angel. Yeah. I'm just saying. But now Asher Angel plays Billy Batson, who lives in Philly. And that's the other thing that kind of bothered me about this movie a little bit. And it bothers me about DC. Because we know that Metropolis is somewhere, as far as DC Universe is concerned, we know there's Metropolis. There's also a Gotham City. And there's also real places like Philadelphia. Like, how the fuck does that work? And where is Metropolis as a distance-wise to Philadelphia? Where is Gotham City distance-wise to Philadelphia? Where is Central City, where the Flash lives? You know, distance-wise to goddamn Philly. You know what I mean? But I digress. So Billy Batson in this movie is an orphan. He's been kicked out of numerous foster homes. He's getting one last shot with this group home, this family, this husband and wife who are also foster kids growing up, and they run a group home with all these kids in there, and he's trying to find his mom. Billy is. Early on in this movie, Billy Batson is greeted by this wizard, who is one of the last remaining wizards. There's like 7 of them, and he's like the last of them. And he's been trying for decades to find the one good person in this world that can carry on the mantle, and he can give his powers to, pretty much. And so what happens? He finds Billy Batson, and if you saw the trailer, I gotta tell you something. This new computer that I have is so touchy and so sensitive that if you even like breathe on the wrong way, it's gonna stop the recording. So once again, just like last week, I promise you that you will get this entire episode, but I have to do some splice work on this. So as I was sitting here talking about Shazam, um, Mark Strong is the villain in this, and his story is when he was a kid. This same wizard that's played by I wanted I know I'm gonna fuck his name up, so I'm just gonna say Dijon Hansu. He was in a lot of stuff. He was in Amistad. He played Russell Crowe's homeboy and Gladiator. He was also Papa Midnight in Constantine. He plays the wizard. And so while Mark Strong's character was a kid, he also was chosen to be the new champion, the new Captain Marvel, as they say. But there's a test, you see. And that test is, you know, the test is either you take the good side or you take the bad side. Because there's these 7 demons that represent 7 deadly sins, feel me? And they talk to people and they kind of consume people. And Mark Strong's character, as a kid, took the dark side. And ever since then, he's been trying to find these 7 deadly sins, which he does in this movie. As far as an origin story, let me say this first and foremost. As far as an origin story, it's nothing you've never seen before. It's Spider-Man. It's in that nature of somebody who gets superpowers. It doesn't really understand what's going on, doesn't understand how to use them, and it has a little bit of fun with them, a little too much fun, and then they got to figure out, like, oh, I got these superpowers, so now I have to be a hero. And what's interesting about this particular story is that Billy Batson is a 15-year-old kid. So when he says Shazam, which I forget the acronym for that, you can Google that shit, Thundercats, because I'm not going to look it up right now. Fuck all that. But he turns into Zachary Levi, this obviously buff, fucking full-grown human being, but he still has the mind of a 15-year-old. And I thought that was very interesting about this. And they have some fun with that. The other thing that I want to say about this movie is that it is very dark sometimes. It's supposed to be like a kid's flick, but they go there sometimes with some really dark shit. I'm not sure if this is a movie that you should show somebody that's like under the age of 13 because they might get freaked out by it. Not completely freaked out, but certainly they might have some nightmares over this. And there are some parts in this movie, because he's an orphan, that they go to, and you're like, wow, I can't believe they went there with that. As far as, is this a theater movie or a bootleg movie? Certainly a theater movie. But you have to go in knowing that this is just a typical origin story. And if you walk in with that frame of mind, you will have fun with Shazam, as I did. Uh, I'm sure some people would ask, maybe even C would ask, does this movie tie into the DC universe, the cinematic universe? It does. I'm not really spoiling anything because they talk about it in the trailer, but yes, this movie does have ties to the rest of the DCU, which I find interesting. We kind of sort of talked about Joker last week. That's the part that you guys didn't was privy to hear, to listen to at DrunkenMania. But I saw the trailer for Joker 9 days ago, a little before Mania Sunday, I should say. And I was like, well, this movie seems like it's Taxi Driver, the DC's version of Taxi Driver. And my biggest question with this movie was, how does it fit with everything else in the DCU right now? Or is that not the point? Is the point of the DCU is that it's not the same as Marvel, and it's not all connected. And sometimes you can go off in these little tangents where it doesn't have anything to do with, say, Justice League or Suicide Squad or Shazam or stuff like that. So I'm very intrigued as to what DC is trying to do with their properties at this point. But I enjoyed it quite a bit. So speaking of Marvel, let's talk a little bit about Disney this week. This is one of the things that I wanted to talk about last week. We didn't get time to do that, and obviously Steve's not here, but I want to talk about it anyways, because Disney has been pretty busy the last few weeks. They were at CinemaCon, which I don't know what that is, but Disney was at it a couple weeks ago. and they did the big rollout. All the movies that are coming out in 2019. Some of the stuff we knew was coming, like, for example, Toy Story. We knew that Toy Story 4, I should say. We know that Lion King's coming and Aladdin's coming. Dumbo's already out. Artemis Fowl, which is coming out, I think, in the summertime. But also movies that I didn't know was coming out. Like, I didn't know they were doing Maleficent 2. You know what I mean? I saw Maleficent 1, and that was definitely one of those movies that I saw just because I was trying to get some that night. At the time, I would not have seen that movie on my own. But then again, there's a copy of Mary Poppins Returns somewhere around here that I have not watched yet. And so I can't really say too much. I just have time for that bullshit these days, whether or not I'm trying to get some. But there are two movies on this list that stuck out to me. The first one is New Mutants. Disney has announced that they are releasing New Mutants. This movie that has been plagued for about a year or so. It should have been out by now, and we still have not gotten this movie. But Disney is taking over that. And so that would be out at some point. That's the funny part about it. It's like, well, it's coming. We just don't know when it's coming, right? The other movie that Disney is putting their name on is the Dark Phoenix saga, the new X-Men movie. It's supposed to be coming out in the summer as well, which is interesting to me because is this the way that Disney brings in the X-Men? They own that shit now. Just like they own Fantastic Four because it's all through through 20th Century Fox. So is this their way of trying to shoehorn in the X-Men? Because in my mind, since this is a done deal at this point, this merger with Disney and 20th Century Fox, which owned the rights to X-Men and the Fantastic Four, it's not a question of if this happens. It's now a question of when and how they bring in the X-Men and the Fantastic Four into the MCU. Because that's coming. That's just coming, right? And because of that, there's so many stories you could do now with the X-Men being in the MCU. You can do, for example, House of M, which tells the story of Scarlet Witch losing her mind and saying, there's no more mutants. And it's the kind of same as Infinity War, where half the mutants are dead. And so that's a very intriguing story. You can also do Civil War 2. You know what I mean? Which in the comic is one side is Iron Man, the other side is Captain Marvel. But it has X-Men and Fantastic Four in it as well. So I'm very, very intrigued as to what they're going to try to do with those properties going forward. And that's the thing, like, MCU has been, Marvel has been really, really tight-lipped about their plans after Endgame. We know for sure that at least Spider-Man's coming, Far From Home. We know that's coming. We know that they're eventually going to do Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and Black Panther 2. But we haven't gotten that rollout like we got a couple years ago, where all these goddamn movies are coming out like years in advance. They haven't done that. So I'm very, very intrigued to know what the next phase of the MCU is going to look like. I guess we'll see, won't we? So let's keep going with Disney for a second, because that's not the only thing that's been going on with Disney. They have officially announced the Disney Plus app. This is this thing that we all knew was coming. We all knew that it was going to be a thing. We just didn't know when it was coming out. Well, not only do we now know when the DC Plus app is coming out, but how much it's going to cost. The DC app, Jesus Christ, the Disney app, excuse me for a second. The Disney Plus app is coming out in November, and it's going to be $6.99 a month, $7. Or, if you prefer, you can get a year pass, which is $70. So you're actually saving money if that's the way you're going to go. Now, let's talk about what you're going to get for your $6.99 a month. Of course, you're going to get everything that Disney has ever done. All the cartoons, all the classics, all the Disney Channel stuff. I think the only thing that they're not going to give you is Song of the South, which I'm like, you might as well just put that shit on there. Come on, Disney. Show people how racist you used to be once upon a time. Shit, you're gonna put Dumbo on there, the original Dumbo with those racist ass crows. Put fucking Song of the South on there. Bite the fucking bullet, right? I mean, shit. WWE Network still puts Chris Benoit matches on, and we all know what happened with that nigga. You know what I mean? So go ahead and put Song of the South on there, Disney. You're also going to get, of course, all the Marvel stuff, all the MCU stuff, and on launch day, you're going to get Captain Marvel and Endgame. So if you haven't seen that by the time this app comes out, pay your $7, and you can see, at, as I'm sitting here talking right now, a very mediocre Captain Marvel flick, and hopefully a really, really good Endgame. You know what I mean? But you're going to get all that. And there has been rumors, at least rumors anyways, that they're going to do a Scarlet Witch Vision show for this app, and also a Loki show with this app, with Tom Hiddleston as Loki. So, I don't know when we're going to get that, but we're going to get that at some point. Of course, you're also going to get all the Star Wars shit. You get pretty much all the Star Wars movies, except for maybe Episode 9, because I just assume that's coming out sometime in the fall. You're also gonna get all like the Clone Wars, and you're also gonna get the Mandalorian, this show, the Star Wars episodic show that we've been talking about for quite some time. You're also going to get all of because of the merger with Fox. You're gonna get all the Fox library. That's 700 movies and 500 shows. So everything, I'm sure, from like Simpsons to Archer to It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, I'm sure. Anything Fox has ever done. X-Files, for example. I hope they put Fastlane on there. That'd be cool. And of course, all their massive movie library. Everything from Alien to Speed, for example. A lot of stuff. They also have a bundle package that you can get ESPN and Hulu with this Disney app. I don't know how Hulu is going to work after this, but they do own ESPN, so it'd be interesting to see what's going on with that, and probably I think all the ABC shows as well. I'm stunned again that they're giving this away for $7 a month. I pay $10 a month for a WWE network. And Disney's practically giving away all this content for just $7. Am I going to get it? Nah, probably not. You know what I mean? I don't have that much of an investment in Disney, and really the MCU. At this point, I've seen all of the MCU movies. So why do I need this? Why do I need this? I'm not going to watch like Disney stuff. Me and C were talking about the other day is like, well, what's your favorite Disney cartoon? And honestly, I don't have one. I don't really have one. There's not one Disney cartoon that came out. It's like, that's my jam right there. Now for Brother C, he'll always go back to The Lion King because I think that was the first Disney cartoon that he ever watched. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm just like, I just didn't grow up that way. I grew up a lot more with Disney's live action stuff. So if you're gonna go live action, it's Tron. Tron is my favorite Disney live action movie of all time. That's where I got Alan 1 from, as we talked about on the Al Capone episode. It's either that or The Black Hole. Their first foray into science fiction, I guess. But as far as their animated stuff, I just, I can say I grew up with it, but not really. I just didn't care for it. But again, $7.99. That's a big. That is quite the deal, quite the steal. I'll say. I'll say. So I wish I can sit here and just sitting here trying to rack my brain and trying to figure out what else I can talk about this week. I did say I might talk about WrestleMania. It was okay. Is it the greatest WrestleMania of all time? No. There's a lot of good matches, but not a lot, but no great ones. The main event is what it was. Charlotte Flair had the entrance of the night with her coming out in a helicopter. That was awesome. Her remaking her father's entrance at the Great American Bash in 1986 because he came out in a helicopter. Nice touch there. Congratulations to Kofi Kingston for being the first black WWE champion ever. It was a nice moment. And the rest of the show was just what it was, DrunkenMania. I had clearly had bigger plans for DrunkenMania than what actually happened. So it's a shame that it didn't work out that way. The Raw after WrestleMania was, again, just okay. No real big surprises, except for maybe Undertaker. Undertaker came out looking old as shit. It's because they claim that he's the dead man. Doesn't mean he's not immortal. This dude ages like everybody else does. I mean, and he looked mad old. But other than that, the Raw after WrestleMania is actually, I feel like one of the weaker Raws after WrestleMania, to be honest with everybody out there. I just didn't think it was a decent Raw. But that's just me. So, as I sit here, it's almost, between this particular episode and this particular part and the part I'm recording now, it's been almost like an hour. So I don't have much more to talk about. I'm sure once Brother C. Oh, speaking of, I'm sorry. I do have one last thing to talk about, and it is related to Disney. I did see the trailer for Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. Brother C, we were talking earlier today before I got his mic, and he made a good point about his trailer. Now, if you are in a TIE fighter and you're trying to, and the only thing that's in front of you is this Jedi, wouldn't you try to shoot her? And I guess now that I think about it, it's like, well, let's say that she knows how to deflect laser beams with her fucking lightsaber. That's not gonna work anyways. You're gonna have to try to run her down, and I don't know if that's gonna work either. I mean, it's just as far as Star Wars is concerned, I'm just like, all right, it is what it is. I think that out of this particular trilogy, this time, only like the first one. Part 2 is just, and part 3, I see that Carrie Fisher is in it. God bless her soul. But I hope that they answer at least one question for me, and that is Princess Leia a goddamn Jedi? Because they didn't really explain that in the last one, which I don't even remember what episode 8 was titled. But how does she survive in space? How can she blow doors off? Can they just say that she's a goddamn Jedi? So I hope that they'll explain that in this particular one. Anyways, so that's all I really wanted to say about fucking this Star Wars trailer. I'm sure maybe if Brother C is here next week, he might have some shit to say about it, but until then, that's all that I have for this. So, without anything further to say, I am going to talk to end this show as we usually do with box office numbers. This is coming from JoeBlow.com. These are the top 10 highest grossing movies of this past weekend. So, the number one movie in the country this weekend was a movie that I just got through talking about not too long ago, Shazam, for the second week in a row. Made $25.1 million. The box office this weekend is made $94.9 million total. That's just domestically. I assume by the time that this episode comes out, it will have surpassed $100 million. The number two movie of the weekend was Little. That is the black version of Big. That's all I can say about that. It made $15.4 million total. Number three was the remake of Hellboy, which hopefully by this time next week I would have seen and give you a review of that. But that movie made $12 million so far. And to be perfectly honest, I've heard nothing but bad things about this new version of Hellboy. That makes me even more intrigued to see it because I'm like, how bad is this movie? And if it is bad, I'm going to blame Mila Jovovich for this. Because, like, you cannot make a good fucking movie. You just can't. So, I guess we shall see by this time next week, won't we? Number four was Pet Sematary, which I have, but I have not seen yet. Running gag on this show. It made $10 million. It has made $41.1 million at the box office so far. Number five was Dumbo, the live action version of Dumbo. It made $9.1 million, $89.9 million domestically. And no, I'm not going to do Racist Crows this week. It's just, my heart's not into it this week to do all that. Number six was Captain Marvel. It made $8.6 million. It has made $386 million at the box office. Number seven was a movie that, again, I just talked about. Jordan Peele's Us. Made $6.9 million. It made $163.4 million at the box office. Number eight is a movie called After. I have no idea what this movie is about. And nor have I seen a trailer for it. But that movie made $6.2 million this past weekend. Number nine was Missing Link. Yet another movie that I've not heard of and not seen a trailer for or advertisements for. But despite all that, it made $5.8 million at the box office. And number 10 was The Best of Enemies, which is the new Taraji P. Henson movie. It also stars Sam Rockwell, based on a true story. It's about civil rights. That's about all I know about this movie. And that movie made $2 million. It's made $8.1 million all together. Next week, very slow week next week. There's not a whole lot going on. There's a horror movie called The Curse of La Llorona, plus another Disney Penguins movie. So if you like March of the Penguins, which I didn't, I thought that movie was boring as fuck. But if you like that movie, there's a new Penguins movie coming out. And then you got Breakthrough, which I don't know that much about. One last thing. Several months after it hit the stage, Bohemian Rhapsody has made almost $1 billion. $1 billion. For a movie that I thought was just okay. not the greatest movie in the world. Not a bad movie, but not the greatest movie in the world. By a wide margin. But it is what it is. I guess people really like Rami Malek as Freddie Mercury, as I did. He's about the best part of that movie. Everything else is just kind of there. So, those are your top 10 highest grossing movies of the weekend. And without anything further to say, I've been Alan One. This has been Geeks from Apartment 2 podcast. Jesus Christ, let me try to get that out. This has been the Geeks from Apartment 2 podcast. We'll be back next week, hopefully with Brother C, with more things to talk about. But until then, we'll leave the door open for you. Later, y'all.